Hi, this is David Douglas, Managing Director of EBO, the digital agency. EBO are the proud sponsors this year of Radio MoLI and MoLI's digital programme.
This year's MoLI Christmas Ghost Story is a live recording from the launch of MoLI Edition's new publication, A Visit from the Banshee, edited by Katie Mishler and produced by the Museum of Literature Ireland in collaboration with the UCD Centre for Cultural Analytics. Across the next half hour, you will hear extracts from 3 stories featured in the book, alongside live music and sound design by Seán Erlaine. In Oein DeBhairduin's story, Hungry Grass, performed by Nuala Hayes, a mother seeks to appease a sinister spirit by offering bread. In Melatu Uche Okorie's story Guardians of the Land, performed by Demi Isaac Oviawe, a young warrior faces the ghostly Warriors Past of Ikenga in a trial of endurance. And in Buille Luath an Luain agus Buille Déanach an tSathairn, a story collected by Peig Sayers and translated here by Éilís Ní Dhuibhne and performed by Nuala Hayes, a grieving farmer's son encounters a mysterious old woman who performs terrifying nightly rituals. A Visit from the Banshee is available from the MoLI shop now. Visit moli.ie/Banshee for details.
As the morning cracked through the horizon, the family's unease began to break, and they busied about their day, making fresh tinware and picking flowers to dry for the locals who may wish to exchange them for coin or food. During the labours of the day, the family decided that they would rest only one more night in the field before leaving. While no harsh words had been said against them, they felt the uneasiness there, the lack of welcome, the sense of being watched by those unseen eyes, and there was something indescribable in their conversation that was nonetheless palpable. That night again, they were awoken by moans and groans outside of the tent. Expecting this, the father had decided not to undress, but to stay awake and alert in case he might catch sight of local youths having fun at their expense. It was a notion neither the mother nor father really believed, but had kept alive in their conversation to protect their wandering thoughts from going to stranger places. He had stayed up by lamplight, his eyes on his sleeping family, and his ears to the world outside their small house. As soon as he heard the mumbles and motions, he jumped to his feet and said a blessing of care and safety for his family before he left the tent in search of the sound sources. The mother, not wishing to upset the children, pretended to be still sleepy, despite her heart beating like the tail of a caught salmon, and wrapped her arms around them in a tight embrace of minding and rest. Soon the father returned, with annoyance on his face and vexation snarling from his nostrils, explaining that the horse and hound were gone. The cob was a trusted family friend and long companion on their travels, and the hounds he had reared by hand from birth. They must have wandered off this strange field by instinct, spooked by the unnatural air. He had not heard their leaving, no barks nor heavy hoofs, so they must not have gotten far, he said. He could not wait till morning to search for them and bring them home. Taking his hat and once again blessing his children, the man left in search of the animals. The moaning continued unabated. Soon one voice among all the rest emerged close to their tent. And for the first time, the mother and children who remained inside the loban could clearly understand the words. Hungry, starving, hungry. An arm appeared through the flap in the entrance. Slowly and in soft motion, the hand outstretched. The mother and the older child shrank back against the straw at the back of the tent. The younger child, however, confused and thinking the arm was of his hero, Daddy, having returned hungry, took a peck of bread from the pocket of his pants, which were lightly folded at the head of his bed, and reached out to hand it over. As his small hand, clutching the crust, came closer to the weird limb, the mother was shook into action and let out a deep roar. She swept him back and wrapped him in her arms, huddling back with her little brood, eyes fixed on the strange hand as the fallen bread rolled towards the bed. The flesh of the arm, which had been fresh and pink when it first intruded, became grey and dull as they watched in terror. The skin began to stretch tight across the bone, the muscle underneath bundling by the elbow. As it reached closer to the family, they could see the skin drying and cracking. With every inch it advanced, it unravelled a little more, and the reek of putrid meat filled their small home. Soon the flesh began to fall away, leaving only the wrappings of a few veins around the chalky bone as it reached closer and closer to them. The mother screamed, enough to rock the lamp by the bedside, and as her cry echoed and sang against its metal, the arm withdrew quickly as if yanked back by its unseen owner. For a moment, there was an eerie silence. Soon, however, the moans and groans began again outside the tent, growing from a small whispers to a howling hurricane. The mother and children stayed pressed together, hands clamped over their ears, eyes wide open in fear. Suddenly, the silhouettes of skulls were pressing against the canvas of the tent, their sharp contours outlined, jaws open, sockets empty. Fleshless fingers moved up and down the tent, picking and scraping like rats in waves of movement, searching for a hole to pick at or a snarl in the weave to unravel. Long teeth pressed taut against the fabric, pushing down towards the children and their mother, the cloth stretched to tearing point. The mother sat, rocking back and forth with her children, shouting out words of prayers. Between the catching and losing of her breath, the howls continued to roar through the MoLI as if a great beast had been wounded. The mother took the peck of bread from the floor, threw it like a dagger across the folds of the canvas and shrieked, "Take it!" She prayed to herself and to anyone who might hear her through the screaming chaos. Let them take it and eat it, and they'll have no more. Then, in a moment, it was all gone.
Gesturing for the older men to step aside, Nama Okba continued with his walk down the line of the young warriors-to-be, studying each masked face closely as he could see into their souls. You will begin to feel like half humans, half gods as time goes on. I understand. I felt the same way as a young warrior-to-be, because you will visit places few men have heard of and see things few humans know exist. A nervy silence descended upon Ejima and the young warriors. You will work with great medicine men from 3 different lands of Ikenga. You will battle men, spirits, wizards, diviners, and mischievous beings who come solely to test the strength of young warriors. For they know that a fallen warrior masquerades is a sign of weak medicine. Nama Okba stopped. His pause so long that Ejimi became jittery. Tonight, you will carry out the test of fire. No form of weakness will be tolerated. It is by no means a small thing to be a guardian of the land. Ikenga will not go to other lands to hire warriors from afar. Nama Okba summoned 2 of his attendants. They appeared as though from thin air, carrying 2 large lanterns. Marching in behind them were 20 young warriors in the same color of Ndambaya and the same mask as Ejima. The sound of their marching feet on the hard earthen surface of an apple early in sync, for there was no jostling or breaking of rank. Halting opposite Ndama, the other warriors-to-be, they left only a short pace between them. These are the young spirits of past warriors of Ikenga. Tonight, they have come to be opponents and will be competing against you. Ejima felt a collective intake of breath at the sight of the shadowy figures. As if to confirm these were truly the dead young warriors of Ikenga, the male chaperones began to cry, the sight of their dead relatives too much for them to bear. Nama Okpa raised his hand scoldingly for silence. To be a guardian of the land of Ikenga is a long, drawn-out battle. If you do not have the stomach for it, leave now. Nama Okpa closed his eyes like a flint had gone into them. Upon opening them, he gestured for his attendees to bring him a woven metal grill basket with no lining. Inside the basket, coals, red from being in the fire for too long, billowed smoke. Nama Okpa stirred the coals with his bare hands until a small fire ignited. Lifting the basket, he placed it on his head. Man has conquered walking on hot coals, but few have tried carrying them bare. 3 of you will carry a basket of hot coals, as will 3 warriors of the past. You will run around Obao with your basket of coal. The ones who endure will stay. Those who cannot will leave us tonight. You can ask for Ayu if you need a little support. Now Okpa stepped aside for them to consult, still carrying the hot coals on his head. Ejame's group formed a circle to talk. The Warriors Past stood in line, unmoving, their eyes staring ahead the whole time. Akawe, a boy from a long line of warriors, raised his hands. I'll go. I've been practicing at home with hot coals wrapped in coconut leaves. I've practiced at home, me too. The group chose Okoawe, Baka, and a third boy, Uku, from Okoawe's homestand, who also volunteered. Nama Okpa beckoned from Okoawe's first. He stepped forward serenely. His family have always been a member of the Nich Aku for as long as anyone in Kanga could remember. Placing the woven Rafa Au on Okoawe's head, Nama Okpa's attendant placed a small basket with hot coals on top of it. Okoawe let out a pained groan. Run, Okoawe! Prevailed by his father's voice, Okoawe took off running with the basket, smoke billowing out behind him. Nama Okpa's attendants ran behind him until he returned. Next was a warrior of the past. He ran and came back with a basket of coals, even quicker than Okoawe. Then it was Baka's turn. He ran and returned a little earlier than Okoawe. Another warrior of the past ran, came back even quicker than the first. Then it was Uku's turn. As the basket of hot coals was placed on his head, Okoawe's body jerked in shock, and with a cry of pain, he pushed the basket down. Immediately, Nama Okpa's attendants took him to his father. A feeling of dejection came upon the warrior-to-be, for they knew without a doubt that the next warrior past could complete his task successfully. Young warriors, choose carefully amongst yourself a third runner. Remember, this is about combating fear, a test of endurance, bravery in the face of danger. Ejime swallowed and stepped aside. Surely, of all the young warriors there, she was a child of the greatest warrior. Feeling the other young warrior's doubtful gaze, Ejime bowed to make her voice croakily. I can do it. I have practiced at home. If you fail and a warrior pass, you will lose. Nama Okpa's assistant brought a fresh basket of coal for Ejame. Because of her short, puffy hair, Ejame knew that carrying the pots of water from the coals would not hurt her as much as it hurt the boys. However, a plume of smoke still crept up her nostrils, causing her to sneeze. The warrior passed sneezed with her, staggering and breaking formation for the first time. Ejame's eyes glistened. Could it be that the warriors past cannot hold their sneezes? As Ejame ran with her pot of coal, she thought about what she had discovered, and if it could help the warriors to be. She was nearly at Obo Oyo when an idea came to her. Ejame waited for Nama Okpa's attendant was lifting the basket of coals off her head to execute her plan. Pretending that smoke had gone up her nose a second time, Ejame sneezed. All the warriors of the past sneezed, as she thought they would. Ejame sneezed again for good measure. All the warriors past sneezed again, looking disorientated. Noticing what was happening, Baka, Akwawe, and all the warriors-to-be began to sneeze. The warriors passed, unable to stand all the sneezing, fell to the ground. Nama Okpa raised his hands, and the warriors past vanished. Turning to the warriors-to-be, Nama Okpa's stern face softened to a smile. That was good work. You saw your opponent's weakness and took advantage of it. See you next time.
The following morning, he said goodbye to the young woman, and he knew she was looking at him longingly as he went, observing him carefully. But even if she was, he headed off and left her behind. And as he walked on, his feet were blistered from the road, the poor man. He didn't meet a soul, going and going all day as he was. And night fell, and if it did, no house or building could he see. He was in a big, lonely glen, with no house to be seen. "Oh, Musha, God save me," he said. "It looks like I'll be sleeping rough tonight under some hedge or ditch. There's no place to stay anyway." He was knackered, and he tried sitting down beside a bush of firs or something, but then, out of the corner of his eye, whatever way he turned, he saw on the side of a hill sheltering the glen, he saw some sort of a dim light. "Oh, there's some sort of a building up there," he said, "and if I could reach it, I might get shelter from the night sky tonight." He moved fast. It wasn't long before he reached the light. There was a little door and a little thatched cottage, and a weak, dim light coming from the door. The door was half open. He went up to the door, and he was afraid to go inside in case what was inside wasn't right or good. But when he went in, there was an old woman sitting by the fire, and she wasn't in great shape, the poor woman. But she glanced at him over her shoulder. "You're welcome, farmer's son," she said. "Good health to you, woman," said the farmer's son. "How well you know what sort of person I am." "Indeed I do," she said. "Sit down. You're exhausted from the road." He sat down, and they talked for a while. "I know what brought you here now," she said, "but I've no way of telling you anything as of yet." And then she came and she reddened up the fire and she settled it down. And when the fire was a glowing mass, she pulled it out. And she took off all her clothes and she lay on the broad of her back in the fire for an hour. When the hour was up, she got out of the fire, as alive and as well as ever she had been. And the son was terrified out of his wits, and that she would do the same thing to him. He didn't know what craziness was in her head, and what had brought him to this strange place. But when she was got dressed up again, They fixed up the fire together and reddened it up, and there was a nice red blaze in his eyes. Next thing, she put a pot of water on the fire until it was boiling. And when it was boiling, she took it off, and there was no weakness in her arm hindering her at all. She set it down in the middle of the house and poured it into a tub. And then off with her clothes again. And she lay down on her back in the tub of boiling water and spent an hour there. When the hour was up, she got out, and when she came to herself, there was a hook hanging in the middle of the house. And she put the rope that was on the hook around her throat, and she hung herself from the hook for an hour. The farmer's son was mighty surprised. He wished to goodness he was outside the door instead of inside. And then, when the hour was up, she said to him, "Now, son, I've done the 3 hours. And you'll remember the first hour when I was in the fire. I am a messenger from God, and there isn't a soul who was born on this earth during that hour who will not be burnt. And did you see the hour I spent in the boiling water? There isn't a soul on this sinful earth in that hour who will not be drowned. And there's nobody who was born during the hour I was hanging from the hook who will not be hanged. Now," she said, "I was in the beginning, and I will be till the end. And I know what you are after. Now I can give you some information. Come along now," she said. "I know well you're not yourself, and you didn't get a wink of sleep or a doze because you saw everything that I did. Come along now, if you want to see your father and your mother." And the two of them went off. And if so, he didn't know whether he was going east or west. But thanks to the glory and the power that she had, apparently, it wasn't long at all until the end of the night. And they came to a narrow, difficult little road. And there were 2 dogs, mastiffs, at each side of the road. One of them was asleep, and the other was tied up with a chain that couldn't be broken. That dog, a bitch, tried to take a snap at him, but if she did, the old hag grabbed him. The old hag carried him past the dog, and on they went for another little while, and they came to a lovely golden gate, all decorated and clean. And when they arrived at the gate, "Now," she said, "stand there and take a look over the gate, over my right shoulder, and see if you recognize anybody." He came, and just as she told him, he stood behind her. And he wasn't long standing there until he saw the beauty and the glory and the awe-inspiring sight that the eye of a sinner can never rest upon. And he stayed there for a while.
You've been listening to the MoLI Christmas Ghost Story, a live recording from the launch of MoLI Edition's new publication, A Visit from the Banshee, edited by Katie Mishler. In this programme you heard extracts from 3 stories featured in the book, alongside live music and sound design by Seán Erlaine. Oein DeBhairduin's story, Hungry Grass, was performed by Nuala Hayes. Melatu Uche Okorie's story, Guardians of the Land, was performed by Demi Isaac Oviawe. And Buille Luath an Luain agus Buille Déanach an tSathairn, a story collected by Peig Sayers, was translated by Éilís Ní Dhuibhne and performed by Nuala Hayes. Find out more about A Visit from the Banshee at moli.ie/Banshee. This recording was produced by Professor Gerardine Meaney, Dr. Katie Mishler, Dr. Jenny Knell, and Benedict Schlepper-Connolly. The recording engineer was Simon Cullen. The edit and mix was by Seán Erlaine, and the series music is by Benedict Schlepper-Connolly. The MoLI Christmas Ghost Story is part of a project that has received funding from the European Research Council under the Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme, Grant Agreement number 884951. The MoLI Christmas Ghost Story is produced in collaboration with the UCD Centre for Cultural Analytics and Victor. Victor, European Migrants in the British Imagination, Victorian and Neo-Victorian Culture, uses big data to trace the rich and dynamic cultural impact of migration on the cultural identity of both migrant and host communities in the historical long term. For more, visit cca.ucd.ie/Victor, VICTEUR. MoLI's digital programme is supported by EBO, the digital agency. For more from Radio MoLI, visit radio.moli.ie.